So I'm Kathy Kibler. I'm a clinical perfusionist at CHI St. Luke's and the perfusion research coordinator at Texas Heart Institute. I'm going to be speaking on the pathophysiology of myocardial injury and del nido cardioplegia in adult cardiac surgery. So the goals for myocardial protection for the cardiac surgeon are quite simple: a quiet operative field and low early mortality, and having the necessary time to perform a perfect surgical repair. Most surgeons believe current myocardial protection strategies are adequate as most patients survive the surgery. So despite surgical advances, perioperative myocardial damage remains the most common cause of morbidity and death following a technically successful cardiac operation. 90% of all patients who do not survive the perioperative period show myocardial necrosis, and that's according to Buckberg et al. Patients suffering from intraoperative myocardial damage may go on to develop late myocardial fibrosis and congestive heart failure. The effects of hyperkalemia with prolonged myocardial membrane depolarization at minus 50 millivolts and ischemic reperfusion injury can lead to myocardial injury. Sodium entry through the window current induces reversal of the sodium-calcium exchanger with the entry of calcium into the cell. Regional ischemia and metabolic acidosis can further impact calcium loading. Increases in intracellular acidosis activate the sodium proton exchanger. The sodium proton exchanger induces further activation of the sodium calcium exchangers, exacerbating calcium overload in the myocyte. The entire cascade can induce depletion of ATP, generation of reactive oxygen species, cell apoptosis, arrhythmias, and loss of contractility. The myocardial ischemia reperfusion injury is a complex process, which involves several interrelated factors, including a decrease in cellular ATP levels, accumulation of hydrogen ions, calcium overload, and production of reactive oxygen species. These factors collectively promote cellular injury and subsequent cardiomyocyte death. During acute myocardial ischemia, the absence of oxygen switches cell metabolism to an anaerobic respiration, resulting in the production of lactate and a drop in intracellular pH. This induces the sodium proton exchanger to extrude acid and which results in intracellular sodium overload, which activates the sodium calcium exchanger to function in reverse to extrude sodium and leads to intracellular calcium overload. During reperfusion, reactive oxygen species are generated by oxidative stress in endothelial cells, myocytes, and neutrophils. This damages the cell membrane by lipid peroxidation, inducing enzyme denaturation and causing a direct oxidative damage to DNA. Reperfusion and reactivation of the sodium proton exchanger results in washout of lactic acid. Several hours after the onset of myocardial reperfusion, neutrophils accumulate in the infarcted myocardial tissue in response to the release of chemoattractant reactive oxygen species, cytokines, and activated complement. As a perfusionist, we protect the heart by arresting the myocardium in diastole, and in this case with blood del nido cardioplegia. Del nido contains extracellular levels of sodium and very low calcium. Its high potassium induces a depolarizing arrest, with the initial dose providing 60 to 90 minutes of quiet arrest. The sodium bicarb acts as a buffer for the acidosis, and the magnesium competes with the calcium overload and improves myocardial recovery. Del nido was originally used as a straight crystalloid cardioplasia in pediatrics, but in adult cardiac surgery, it's mixed with blood in a ratio of 1 part blood to 4 parts del nido cardioplegia. This improves the oxygen carrying capacity of the cardioplegia. The blood also is a natural buffering agent that contains histidine, and it's an antioxidant properties for free radical scavenging. The lidocaine in the del NIDO is a sodium channel blocker. It blocks the voltage-gated sodium fast channels that are responsible for the action potential upstroke. Lidocaine alone has not been translated as a primary cardioplegic agent because of a significant adverse effects at high dosages. It can cause torsades de pointe and convulsions in some patients. The use of del NIDO has grown in its use at CHI St. Luke's Hospital over the years. For valve surgeries, the initial dose is normally 1,000 to 1,500 mLs antegrade, with subsequent doses given Q30 to 60 minutes, with volumes ranging 200 to 500 mLs, and that is very surgeon specific. Some surgeons like to redose every 30, some every 45, some every 60, but no one at CHI St. Luke's goes over 60 minutes before giving a subsequent dose. For AATA surgeries, the initial retrograde, they start retrograde with 1,000 to 1,500 mLs of del NIDO, followed by 500 to 1,000 mLs antegrade through osteocannulation. Subsequent doses are also Q30 to 60 minutes, depending on the surgeon, at a volume of 200 to 500 mLs. For CABG surgery patients, the initial dose is 500 mLs antegrade, followed by 500 mLs retrograde. Subsequent doses given every 30 to 60 minutes at a volume of 200 to 500 mLs. You should note that you don't want to give a dose of cardioplegia if the cross clamp is going to come off in less than 20 minutes. It's going to delay the reanimation of the heart, and you may have to wait longer to be able to wean from bypass. Del NIDO cardioplegia contains 130 mLs per liter of lidocaine. Lidocaine toxicity threshold is about 4.5 milligrams of lidocaine per kilogram of body weight. So for a 100 kilo patient, the max lidocaine dose is 450 milligrams. You would reach that toxic level if you delivered 3.5 liters of the crystalloid portion of del NIDO. So you have to be careful if it's a really long case that you may get some lidocaine toxicity and be longer to wean. This is from the STS 2022 report of adult cardiac surgical procedures. You can see from 2010 to 2021, there's a general increase in the number of cardiac surgical cases. There's a slight drop between 2019 and 2021 due to the restrictions of the COVID-19 pandemic, where we were under restrictions of being able to do surgery at the same level. And you can see that the isolated on-pump CABG cases have increased, while off-pump CABGs have decreased over the years. SAVR cases have decreased because of advent of TAVR procedures now, and the repair of mitral valve repairs have increased continuously, while mitral valve replacements have remained constant. All of these cases require myocardial protection. This is a subset selected outcomes from the 2020-2021 outcomes from the STS report. And it shows across all types of cases via CABG, valve, multi-valve, that there's a new onset atrial fibrillation has been pretty steady around 20 to 30%, which indicates myocardial injury. This could be due to that prolonged membrane depolarization with high potassium cardioplegia, which changes the baseline potential from -85 to -50. Supraventricular tachyarrhythmias, mostly atrial fibrillation, have been reported in 10 to 50% of patients after open cardiac surgery with depolarizing cardioplegic solutions. Life-threatening ventricular arrhythmias are considerably less common. Myocardial ischemia and hypothermia during arrest and cross-clamping both contribute to increasing intracellular acidosis. The intracellular calcium overload and ischemic reperfusion injury predisposes the myocardium to myocardial stunning, arrhythmias, endothelial activation, inflammation, cell apoptosis, and necrosis. Today, irrespective of efforts to use different additives, blood dilutions, and whole blood itself, the evidence suggests that depolarizing the myocardium cell membrane with 15 to 25 millimolar potassium provides suboptimal myocardial protection. The atria and the ventricles have very different sensitivities to high potassium and promote an arrhythmogenic substrate between the chambers during reanimation after cold diastolic arrest. This slide, there's been a steady increase in the use of del nido cardioplegia in adult cardiac surgery in the United States. From 2014 to 2018, the use of del nido has increased across all types of surgeries, not just valve surgeries. And the use of del nido is often in adult surgery mixed with blood. This is a systemic review and meta-analysis conducted by Lee et al. It comprises 41 studies comparing del nido cardioplegia with conventional cardioplegia. The del nido was routinely given as a single dose with a cross-clamp time less than 90 minutes. Compared with multi-dose cardioplegia, single-dose administration has been associated with less cardiopulmonary bypass and less time and less cross-clamp time. A single dose was more beneficial to uninterrupted operative procedures and could avoid prolonged ischemic damage. During bypass, patients have been less susceptible to hyperglycemia when using del nido cardioplegia because del nido does not contain glucose. The pooled data demonstrates patients in the del nido use less volume of cardioplegia than those in the conventional cardioplegia group. The lower volume of cardioplegia was related to less hemodilution and decreased need for postoperative packed red blood cell transfusion. The slide also contains enzyme analysis of troponin T, troponin I, and cyclic CKMB levels, which are specific and sensitive biomarkers to myocardial injury and independent predictors of mortality in cardiac surgery. Postoperative myocardial enzymes was similar between the two groups. Del nido was also demonstrated equivalent outcomes compared to conventional cardioplegia about postoperative inotropic support and incidence of AFib. There is no significant difference in in-hospital stay and mortality, although the pooled data have been demonstrated with a shorter ventilation time and length of ICU in the del nido cardioplegia group. This postoperative ICU stay time may be associated with shorter bypass times and cross-clamp times and less hemodilution. Current markers of myocardial protection are poor, such as hospital and ICU length of stay, arrhythmias, inotropes, balloon pump usage, and 30-day mortality. They often require large numbers of patients to detect a statistical difference and to prevent a type 2 error. Guru et al. Performed a meta-analysis of randomized clinical trials in 2016. The results again showed the superiority of blood over crystalloid-only cardioplegias with a lower incidence of low output syndrome and reduced CKMB levels. Both of these are indicators of muscle damage and increased late mortality. Cardiac enzyme release has been shown to directly correlate with muscle damage and outcomes. Even small elevations have been shown to be significant, and the higher the level, the more the death. Also, the septum is a subendocardial structure so that it's more vulnerable to inadequate myocardial protection. It's easily seen on echocardiogram, and its dysfunction indicates muscle injury from inadequate myocardial protection. Septal dysfunction is common, occurring in 40 to 80% of cardiac surgical patients. The septum occupies 35 to 40% of the total ventricular mass, making it much more massive than the right ventricle free wall and 50% of the left ventricle muscle mass. So moving forward, it would be the STS is proposing reporting of cardiac enzymes and wall motion abnormalities as a function of outcome. And in summary, I'd like to say that, blood cardioplegia is widely used in the U.S., and it's given at various concentrations and frequencies. The clinical outcomes of del nido cardioplegia have been shown to be non-inferior to outcomes of conventional cardioplegia in the adult cardiac arena. An integrated cardioplegia strategy may aid in reducing myocardial damage. Monitoring postoperative enzyme release and septal function is critical in diagnosing injured myocardium. There is no gold standard that works for all patients. Blood is simply the vehicle to deliver the cardioplegia. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kathy, for sharing with us all this data and your experience with del nido cardioplegia. And now we would like Debbie Adams to make a comment for this presentation. Debbie, thank you so much for your participation in this webinar. Debbie is the director of the School of Perfusion Technology in Texas Heart Institute. She is a great teacher, and she also has been involved in many, many perfusion hospitals and in other countries also, right?
Yes, thanks, Athena. I first want to extend my appreciation and gratitude for including us. And you might want to turn your, I'm sorry, Kathy and I are in the same room, for including Kathy and I in your conference. It's a privilege, and I hope that we can collaborate for a bigger conference in the future with Texas Heart. A comment, Kathy's done an incredible job of the overview of del nido usage here at CHI St. Luke's Texas Heart. One challenge for us is that some of our surgeons that have been using the integrated myocardial management, or the Buckberg method, have been forced to switch to del nido because of supply chain issues, availability of the cardioplegia solutions and the substrates that go into the Buckberg, or the high K, low K, however you reference it. And so I think for perfusionists everywhere, a wake-up call of the responsibility for us to really understand the various methods and cardioplegia delivery styles and the solutions that we're giving, because they don't switch over. And so if you're giving del nido, you don't give it the same way, you don't give it at the same dosage, subsequent dosage. And that's a hard challenge for us as a clinician to talk to our surgeon, because if you have a surgeon that's been using Buckberg for 30 years and now today he has to use del nido, he still wants to give it every 15 minutes. And giving del nido every 15 minutes, Kathy has explained, would give you a real challenge of getting the heart to wake back up. I think also for perfusionists, we need to be able to understand what we need to do in the event that the heart isn't stopping, so that we can be proactive in different solutions. Do we need to change the pressure? Do we need to change from antegrade, retrograde? Do we need to change from high K to a del nido? And being able to communicate to our surgeons so that they feel confident that we understand what we're doing, and that we're not, I don't understand Greek. I wish I did, but I think somebody may have commented one style does not fit all. And maybe that's what the challenge is for the future for us to look at more of a prescriptive type myocardial protection for the patients, so that delivery for one particular patient is not exactly the same for another. So we end with still more studies to do. So, but we did use Del NIDO. My experience with Del NIDO was on medical missions because we didn't have Buckberg. Our custodial delivery didn't come, and so we made the Del NIDO in the hospital, and it worked quite well. We did have an issue with overdosing, and so we had to stay on bypass for quite a long period of time before the heart finally woke up. But that patient did just fine. So again, thank you for giving me an opportunity to make a comment, and for Kathy and I to share what we do at THI. So again, thank you very much, and wishing you all a blessed holiday season. Happy Christmas. Peace.
Thank you again, Debbie, and Merry Christmas to you all. Maybe in another conference you can learn better Greek, and we can maybe speak better English.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Can you ask a question? Kathy is here. Yes, Kathy. A question. When do you deliver it 1,000 medial cardioplegia, and when you deliver it 1,500 cardioplegia? Depend of the weight of the patients, the aortic class.
It's usually surgeon-based, but usually it's based on the weight of the patient. So we're in Texas. We have some big patients that are way over 100 kilos. And some of those larger patients, or it's going to be a very long surgery, they're going to give a larger first initial dose, closer to 1,500. Smaller patients, you may give a little bit less, but most people here at Texas Heart give 1,000 as the initial dose. They'll go 1,500 if the patient is 120 kilos, 130 kilos. And we have one surgeon gives it every 30 minutes. Most of them will give it every 60 minutes. So you notify them at 45 minutes saying, we're at 45. Do you want to give it at 60? If they think they're going to be finished and the cross clamp's coming off relatively soon, they'll skip that dose and let it go a little beyond 60 when the cross clamp comes off. If they know that it's going to be a lot longer, they're going to give another dose, anywhere between, some surgeons only give 200 and some give a standard 500. And it's different surgeons, different preferences. So, but no one here at Texas Heart goes 90 minutes to give a subsequent dose. In the country, there are a lot of other surgeons that will wait 90 minutes for the subsequent dose. Here, usually 60 minutes. And, as long as it's less than 90 minutes, it should be fine with a single dose.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me, Kathy. Another question.
Yeah. Just to add to that,
another question.
We had one surgeon that actually doubled the potassium amount in the Del NIDO, and then gave it at the ratio of 4 parts blood, 1 part crystalloid. And he would go 70 minutes. And then if he thought he was going to take the clamp off, he would. But that's the only surgeon that we had. And he did double the potassium load. So Kathy's back. Sorry. Your question?
Hello from Greece. I would like to ask if you have any experience of giving the NIDO in pediatric cardiac cases.
They are Texas Children's, which is our affiliate, used to use the Me solution, but they recently, in the last 2 years, switched to Del NIDO, and they give weight-based, because they do neonates up to adult-sized patients, and they pre-mix their Del NIDO. They don't have a system that can automate 1 to 4 and combine. So they, to their Del NIDO solution, they put in a liter of Del NIDO, they add 200 mLs of patient blood, and it's pre-mixed. And then they give that the initial dose, and then at 60 minutes they redose. And that's what they're doing at Texas Children's.
This is what we did.
Okay, thank you.
This is what we did for peds.
So, yeah. So Debbie, when she was on her medical mission, they gave the initial dose of for pediatrics, the 10 to 20 mLs per kilo for the initial dose.
Yes.
And then they repeated, redosed at 45 minutes, 10 to 20 ml per kilo per minute rate. And they gave 200, they kept the pressure at, for the adults at 200 millimeters of mercury.
Less than 10 kilos we gave.
If the patient was less than 10 kilos, they gave them a dose of 10 mLs per kilo as the loading dose.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much.
So as you discovered, there is a great interest here about del nido cardioplegia. We started to using it, but we still need some data and some experience from you how to correctly use del nido. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Now I would